Hello and welcome back to the Monsters of Monster Hunter Double Cross, where today we are taking on the monster with hands down the best fight theme in the entire series. I mean, seriously, who does not love Khezu's fight theme? The answer is nobody. I mean, it's just so dynamic with all of its no instruments whatsoever. And we're going to be using Guild Hammer for this. No real reason other than just Khezu doesn't have a severable tail, so Hammer can break everything that it's got. Man. It's actually, I'm pretty sure I know how Khezu's fight theme or lack thereof came about. Oh, hi. And it's because the monster is blind. And the way the older games were handled, a monster had to spot you to apply the little yellow and red eye debuffs. So back then it was just the yellow eye debuff. And that was what enabled you to actually do the whole Superman dive thing and whatnot. And since Khezu was blind, they made it not apply that debuff because it never spotted you. And I'm pretty sure starting the battle music was also applied to that debuff, because if you... Well, basically, when a monster spotted you, it played the You've Been Spotted music, and then it went from that into the battle music. But since Khezu would never spot you, the game never thought to go on to battle music. So we ended up with Khezu's theme, which you can hear playing right now. And then I think, like, when they brought Khezu back in the 4th generation, the game no longer handled music in the same way, but since Khezu never had music, and it was kind of iconic and unsettling the way that you fight this kind of unsettling looking thing without any music playing, I think they probably just decided, hey, let's keep it that way. And so we get to fight Khezu with no music playing. Though I will say, I personally would prefer if some music did play like it does for Giginox. Because Giginox may not have Khezu's theme, but it still manages to be interesting. Like, having music doesn't take away from Giginox's creepiness. And much like how Kurapeko is basically an improved version of Kutku, and Uragon is an improved version of Gravios in my eyes, Giginox took the concept of that Khezu has, being the unsettling, flabby, cave-dwelling, flying wyvern, and made it a much more interesting and dynamic monster. Admittedly, swapping the electricity for poison did change things a bit, but I personally think it changed it for the better, making Giginox a much more interesting monster. And, like, even if you think that electricity is better, that's what Baleful Giginox is for. Like, I think Baleful Giginox is a much better execution of the Khezu concept than Khezu is. And I wish they would bring Giginox back, because Giginox was great. Because, like, Khezu is just Khezu. It's a first-gen monster, and it really shows. It's got a lot of stiff animations. Whereas Giginox, like most pseudo-wyverns, most of its movements are at least somewhat dynamic. And Giginox especially, it actually had a lot of unique animations that set it apart from other pseudo-wyverns. Like the way its body kind of twists when it jumps and whatnot. Giginox was a great monster. And I personally believe it to be just a straight upgrade over Khezu. Admittedly, Khezu's face is a little more unsettling, but the fact that it uses just the generic flying wyvern skeleton is just weird to me. It looks like a stripped chicken, which isn't so intimidating, whereas Giginox looks kind of like a leech type thing, which, in my opinion, is just even more unsettling. Also, Giginox is apparently much quicker on walls than Khezu is, because this thing was not going fast just there. And there goes the face break. And apparently we knocked it out of the sky. I love KOing monsters out of the sky, because they fall, then they stand up, and then they realize they were KO'd and fall over again. It's hilarious. Never ceases to be funny. Great, it's on the wall again. Okay, it's off the wall again. I guess it's leaving. Another thing Giginox does that Khezu doesn't do is it will actually lay eggs and whatnot, and you get to fight Giggies as well, which just makes it feel like an even bigger threat, because this thing that we've been tasked with killing is constantly having babies while we fight it. Which just makes it feel like if you don't kill this thing soon, the entire place could be overrun with Giggies. Khezu doesn't have anything like that. Best it can do is have Khezu whelps show up when you mine a Kushala Daora shell. I actually do want to get pinned by this thing, if I can. Because Khezu's pin is actually kind of terrifying. It's one of the things that they really did right in terms of making Khezu unsettling when they brought it forward. Like, Khezu's pin, in my opinion, is a little bit more frightening to behold than Giginox's was. Of course, we need this thing to get on the ceiling and do a specific move in order to initiate the pin, and we didn't get as many hits there as I wanted. Thankfully, with this being a Hyper Khezu, we can get our juice back pretty quickly. Especially when its face is hyper. And in case you haven't realized, we've got Spinning Meteor, and we also have Absolute Evasion. To your pin! That is not your pin. I will say one thing that disappoints me about Giginox. We see Giggies in more areas than just the Tundra, but Giginoxes were only ever in the Tundra in 3U and Portable Third and Tri. Like, it feels like a lost opportunity to not have Giginoxes everywhere Giggies can be found. Get on the ceiling, you jerk. Yes, like that. Now pin me. Yep, this is it. So yeah, we get knocked down, and then this face comes on over, and... yeah. It's not really a very damaging pin, but, like, we're being eaten alive here. Of course, even if I had had enough health to let that pin run its course, it still wouldn't have done more than just damage to us. So, like, the Khezu would have thrown us at the end of that pin. But still, it's just seeing it. If you don't have dung, it's very unsettling. Like, it's one thing to be kind of chomped on here and there as a monster has you pinned, but it's another entirely to just be all up inside the monster's mouth while it chews on you. Way to cheat me out of my last hit there, Khezu. We can't be that far from a second KO, can we? Oh, hey, there goes the body. That's full brakes. No mount needed, no cut weapon needed. And for those not in the know, those lines of electricity emanating out from that second discharge are what they added to Khezu and G rank. They go pretty far, though. Apparently the hitbox is not quite as far. It doesn't extend quite as far as the visual does, based on what just happened. And also, hey, that was a pretty neat KO. It's kind of sad that exhaust does nothing to hyper monsters. Does take away a little bit from the hammer's utility. I mean, being able to KO things is nice, but being able to KO them and even when you're not KOing them, steal their stamina, that's nicer still. And they don't give impact weapons anything to compensate that I know of. Unless maybe the damage boost for hitting a hyper area is larger for impact. It could be, but I don't expect that it would be. And besides, even if it was, then they'd have to give the exhaust file switch axes something else as well. So I expect it's more likely that just the common thing they expect you to do with exhaust damage on hyper monsters is just don't use it. So there's a reason I followed this Khezu up here. And it's that if you use your carving knife while on the wall against a monster that is either flying or on the wall with you, it's got a decently high rate of scoring a flinch and therefore knocking the monster down. Huh. Khezu just stays in that position as it flies, does it? Doesn't glide like certain other monsters. It's kind of silly looking. That's a good flinch. Probably kept me from taking his tail. And we're also probably pretty close to a mount at this point. Though we need this jerk to be under and close enough to a ledge in order to actually get one. Over here, buddy. Ow. Thanks, cat. As thanks, I give you this life powder. Oh. Thanking me for my thanking you, huh? Interestingly enough, Khezu was one of the monsters that gave me the most trouble in Freedom Unite, just because my hammer bounced off basically everything but its face and its belly. And attacking its face was a little dangerous because it had really high damage output, at least against my gear. So that was a thing. And when I was playing through Try, Giginox was the first monster I ever timed out against. I was using a hammer back then on Giginox, and it spent a lot of time on the walls and ceiling, and I just didn't really know how to deal with its movements when it wasn't on the walls and ceiling, so I did not do nearly enough damage. And this is going to be death right here. So I guess these flabby cave dwellers are things that I don't necessarily do so well against. At least in some cases. Honestly, I think I'm pretty okay against Khezu these days. Especially in more modern games. Because his damage output isn't quite so ridiculous. Pray for hiccups. Yeah, sure, we could take some bounce bombs. So there actually is something to pay attention to for Khezu while it's still alive. When it enrages, you can actually see its veins pulsing, which in this HD version of this game actually looks really disgusting, which is exactly what they were going for. So, yeah, pay attention to that. They also did a good job of adding, like, just the right amount of sheen to Khezu's skin to make it seem kind of moist and just... They did a good job making it look nasty. I'd love to see what they could do with Giginox in this lighting system. But alas, I won't get to. Dang it. Well, thank goodness I remembered I had absolute evasion. Couldn't use it in time there, though. So yeah, now the thing's pissed off, like, on its chest especially. Seriously. Well, I guess we'll have to wait a little longer. I need to not cart again. Not long after I was saying I thought I was pretty okay against Khezu, too. Almost feels like it was just trying to say, hey, you sure about that? And I think it'll actually be faster to get up there if we go through the cave. Yeah, it's only 2 load screens regardless of which direction we go, but this way the load screens are closer together and we don't have to climb a wall. Hey, buddy. Gonna need you to get angry, but then not kill me for it. Glad I managed to get out of the way there. Alright, this ought to be able to get us to get it angry. If it's not angry after this, something's wrong. Like, you can actually even see the veins kind of going while it's not angry, but when it is angry, it's much clearer. Like, look at that. Also, it's almost dead. It's kind of interesting that the second discharge is the larger one. You would expect it to be the opposite, and actually until G rank, it is the opposite. But then G rank shows up and they flip it. And now it limps. I still find it amusing that the easiest way to tell Khezu's about to die is when it just sits around doing nothing for a little while. Yeah, now's not the time for bounce bombs. Though now is. No, it wasn't. It was behind me. Yeah, we can go ahead and use a trap for spinning meteor purposes. Not gonna... Thanks, Khonshu, and thanks, Khezu. Yeah, not gonna cap it, just using the trap for damage. Though the most important hit did not hit the most important part. And I don't have a spinning meteor for this one. Oh, no, I shouldn't kill it in a pit, because then we can't see the whole monster. Not like it's staying here anyway, apparently. Unfortunately, this thing sleeps hanging from the ceiling, so it's not like we would be able to actually use a good attack against it. Like, if it slept on the ground, you can bet it would be getting one of these. But it doesn't. So I am still waiting out here for just a little while in hopes that it will go to sleep in there. I actually don't know whether it sleeps in there. I think it does, though. Especially considering how quickly it limped back over there. Yep, that's a sleepy Khezu. It's actually a unique sleep animation, which is kind of cool. You definitely don't get to see that with other monsters. Uh-huh. And I mean, they do at least let you do this. It's quite a long knockdown for how easy it is to get. And there we go. The blood stops pumping. Like, just the level of gloss on this skin is just the right amount of disgusting, in my opinion. And, like, they did a decent job making it actually seem, like, flabby. They did a good job making Khezu disgusting in terms of, like, texture and whatnot, and I mean, who wouldn't love that smile, huh? I just think Giginox is a cooler execution of the concept, and, like, there's only so much you can do with the generic flying wyvern skeleton. They did about as much as they could. But I think the pseudo-wyvern skeleton just works so much better for the concept. So, yeah. Put me on Team Giginox. And that is going to be it for this episode. Join us next time when we take on one of my favorites, Tigrex. See you then, friends.